The tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to America in Black and White. I'm your host, Charles King. Tonight on America in Black and White, we welcome a man whose life story is a testament to endurance, calling, and purpose-driven leadership. Michael A. Wilkins is not simply a consultant, not simply a speaker, not simply a pastor. He is a builder of people, systems, and communities. For more than 25 years, he helped reshape Washington state government through accountability, transparency, and operational excellence. And in 2025, he stepped boldly into entrepreneurship as the founder of Doge Consulting LLC, carrying with him a lifetime of wisdom, discipline, and service. But Michael's story begins long before the titles. It begins in the strength of a mother who taught him resilience and a great-grandmother whose faith and fortitude became the blueprint for his life. It begins with the lessons of community, the responsibility of leadership, and the belief that transformation is not an event, it's a lifestyle. Tonight, we explore the journey of a man who has served as a pastor, a coach, a trainer, and an author, a motivational speaker, and a public servant. A man who has chaired advisory boards, shaped housing developments, influenced regional planning, and stood on international stages, including TEDx Cairo, sharing a message of empowerment and possibility. This is not just an interview. This is a masterclass of purpose, perseverance, and the power of legacy. Michael Wilkins, welcome to America in Black and White.
Sure.
Hello, sir.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm doing just excellent. Wow, your face is like it's blacked out.
I got the light on. I'm not sure what's going on.
So, how are you this wonderful evening?
I'm doing good, sir. Is it the picture better now or no?
No, actually, it's like you're, it's like a very dark head and a hat.
I can take my hat off. I don't know why it's dark.
Okay,
got-
now we can see you.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. So, is there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we get into the show?
Yeah, I'd just like to give you a metaphor or should I say a saying that I've used in my life in the last, I'm gonna say 15 years. What you think about, you bring about. I believe that whatever thought process comes to your mind, your soul, your spirit, you bring about the vibe, and it manifests itself that day, that week, that month, sometime in your life. So be careful what you say.
Wow, I like that. So let's get into the part where I like to start off, where I like the audience to get the opportunity to learn a little bit about who Michael A. Wilkins was before you got to be where you are now. When you look back at your childhood, what's the first moment that told you leadership was part of your destiny?
When my mom became the president of the PTA at my school, she was always sort of a pillar in the community, feeding people, doing things for people. But when she became the president of the PTA, it was no joke. She was taking no prisoners. She wanted to make sure there was change in the school, especially for minorities. Being that she was a white woman having black children mixed with Chinese, it was a different time and age then, and things weren't just given to us. So she didn't take things for granted. And so my mom was always my hero, but she gave back in a way that endeared my spirit, my brother's spirit, to kind of duplicate it in a different way when we became of age.
What values did your mother instill in you that still guide your decisions today?
Love, just personal love, sharing, kindness, passionate, and execution. One thing that my mom did, she was very organized. She made sure that if she had something on her agenda or something she was going to do, that she executed it with excellence, meaning that she did things in pods, or I'm going to call it maybe silos. And when she finished one thing, she went on to the next. But she always executed whatever she put out for that day. And so that taught me some discipline about working within time frames.
Wow. So, and watching your mother as she did those things and as disciplined and as structured as she was, what were some of the things that you can tell our audience today, that some of the points that were so pointed that you had no choice but to understand and learn from those things that made you the person you are today?
She had this thing about time, because I think a lot of us waste time. So, at certain time I had to be up, had to have my bed made, had to be on the way to school. And so she taught me the discipline of time. And that's one thing I think is important in leadership, is that, we only have 24 hours in a day. A lot of it's wasted. I found out employees, most of the time, they work 2 or 3 hours. The rest of the day is wasted. They're meandering around or doing something else. And so she taught me to execute time, but to do it in a way that was effective and hold everybody accountable while holding myself accountable.
So your great grandmother played a major role in your life. What was her greatest lesson to you?
She taught me about the spirituality of God and church, and she was another person to give back. She was on the board of the church. She helped build the church. She was somebody that was family oriented. We had to have Sunday breakfast and dinner all at the table. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We all had to sing on Sundays together as a family. And so she instilled in us that family trait, and to carry it forward. And little did I know she was helping me become a leader. When I was a little kid, I didn't know that. But when I got older, before she passed away, I shared some of the things I had done. And, it made me cry, because I was like, why am I doing this, Grandma? She's like, 'cause I taught you. I was like, yeah, you taught me. You taught me well, a little too well. But she was somebody that I didn't know that our family was the first Black policeman, first Black postman, things of that nature, until I got a little bit older. But now I want to pass it on to my family and my siblings and to my children.
Oh, wow. So when you think about that, especially the lessons there from your grandmother, how are you using that today that's manifesting your business and the things that you do?
Well, Charles, is a good question. I always try to start out with listening, being quiet and just listening, and taking that in and try to come out with a strategic way to expand on what people have said, but in a way that makes sense to me and to them, so that they can grow and scale their business. I'm a strategist at heart. And so it takes a little time for me to kind of give back what I'm going to say, because I'm listening. And to me, that's a trait that some leaders don't have. Most of the time, they're, I want to call it, be the boss, telling you what to do, and very little listen. And sometimes they lose their audience and their staff because of that. Because at the end of the day, I look at it as that I'm just giving instructions. I'm not doing the job. Somebody else, I got to count on others to do the job. And so I have to entrust certain skill sets in them. And a lot of them are a lot better than us leaders at the jobs we do. It's just we see the bigger picture. Maybe they don't, but I want to share. And so that's something that I learned in the very beginning of my leadership.
So how did growing up in your community shape your worldview?
I'm going to say through a teacher that I had in high school. His name was Mr. Vukovic. He was from a different country. I was in an all-Black school, but he said some things that still made sense today. He would always say, you're a big fish in a little pond, or little fish in a big pond, you can get it by sharks. And so he said, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. That always stuck in my head, Mr. King, because a lot of people plan to fail. And so when they don't plan, they fail and they wonder why. So I always try to plan. I'm not perfect at it, but I try to plan. The other thing was he always taught us that we could be bigger than ourselves to give back to our community, and that just because I grew up in poverty didn't mean that that was my destination.
What was the first major challenge you overcame that made you believe you were built for more? For more?
Cancer. I was diagnosed with cancer in 2010. It had pretty much ran through my body. I even contemplated suicide. I just was kind of done with life, giving up, and getting through that taught me resiliency. It taught me that it wasn't about me, it was about a bigger picture and to help others. I joined a survivors group, and through that group, we raised a couple $1 million for other groups and help people. And it taught me that I was built to speak, but although I was doing it before that, but that's when I knew, because people started listening. I guess they were listening to the passion and the way I said things, and that I cared. I wanted to give back. I went to appointments with other people that had cancer, just kind of walk them through the window.
Wow. Well, I think that's definitely a good Samaritan thing to do. There is a comment here, here in the chat that I'm going to put on the screen for you. You see it right there. It's from Divine Empress, and she says, "Love indeed."
Amen to that. That is that's something that we don't get enough of. The Bible says to love thy neighbor as thyself. In the Great Commission, it says, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, thy soul, and thy mind. But I think that we listen to the A part, not the B part. Love thy neighbor as thyself. You got to love yourself first before you can love your neighbor, before you can love your neighbor. And I love me, but I also love others. I think I'm not on this earth by myself. I'm not an item in the land of Patmos by myself. I have to share with others, and we might as well do it together. It's easier to love than it is to hate. It takes too much energy. It can make you sick. It causes violence. It causes despair and perils. And it's not worth it.
When did you first recognize your calling to serve others?
I'm going to say at age 12, I was asked to do this play. They made me the lead part of the play. It was a Christian play. I was stumbling through the words, but somewhere my passion came out, and the teacher's like, "You're a born star." Yeah, whatever. I didn't want to do this play in the first place, but I found that I was a quiet person. I was timid a lot of times, but I started finding my ground and my voice as the years went on. I believe when I transitioned from Washington State to Oakland, I had to find my voice. There was a lot of violence. I had to stand up for myself. I got attacked a couple of times, and that's when I just found out. People found out I wasn't playing. I was serious about who I was and where I was going. And I think that survival of the fittest, either you climb to the top or you fall to the bottom. And sometimes you find out who you really are when you go through traverse times.
So what role did faith play in your early development?
It was the key foundation. Without faith, I wouldn't have made it. Without faith, I couldn't make it. Christ is the center of my life. I went through some hard times, made some mistakes, did some things I shouldn't have, but every time I went through some peril, Charles, I found my way back through Christ. I remember when I was in the military, I lost a good friend. To this day, it bothers me because he was one of my soldiers, and I just didn't think I was going to get through it. I just didn't think I'd make it through, but I found perseverance through my faith in God. I knew that there was some reason that it happened, and what I was supposed to do through that was live, to persevere, to be who I was. Because the last thing he said to me was, go on and be who Michael's supposed to be. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're supposed to be here with me. But now I know what that means, because he saw some leadership that I didn't see in myself.
So with all this resiliency that's taken place, and the different stops, that caused you to have to stop for periods of time, what was your mental like, and what were you thinking coming forward as you were jumping these obstacles and rising like a phoenix?
Be honest with you, that's a good question, Charles. Sometimes I didn't know what I was doing until I got to the end of the gate. I believe it was just survival, but then I found that somebody had to stand up because others didn't want to. So, I was chosen, so I stood up. I stood up when it wasn't popular. I stood up when it wasn't easy. But the fact that I stood up is all that matters. I think about Martin Luther King. Was it easy for him? No. Was it necessary? Absolutely. Sometimes we got to do things. Sometimes we're put in situations where God has put us there to stand up. And I know when I'm supposed to stand up, and I know when I'm supposed to sit down. And at those points, I stood up. And I didn't stand by myself. I stood on pillars of others. And that's why I'm giving back now.
So, who were the early mentors who helped shape your path?
Um, Again, my mother, my grandmother, also this man I met that I got a scholarship from. I can't remember his name, but he instilled a lot of knowledge in me. He said, you're better than that. You can go further than that. He pushed me. And I always wondered why. I was like, why are you pushing me? He said, Michael, you were built for this. Don't give up on yourself. And I was like, okay, but I don't have a father in my life. He said, well, you got God. And that was the key. You got God. That's your father. And so I had a stepfather that stepped in my life when I was 16, and he helped reared me. And he kind of echoed the same sentiment. Michael, you can be better than that. When he saw me make mistakes, he would, turn me around and point me in the right direction and say certain things that instilled faith in me. And I thought, wow, why is he saying this to me? He ain't my dad. Having that, that little rubber band reflection. And after a while, I had to go back to him and say, I love you. Thank you for what you've done. Because without him, I couldn't have been who I am today.
Wow. So, with his rearing and with his help, did it? Tell us, how did that shape you? As a young man growing into adulthood to be your own man. How did that shape you?
It shaped me because for somebody that didn't help birth me, didn't give the seed to my mom, to have that kind of indelible love felt special because my father wasn't in my life. He came back, when I got a little bit older. But for somebody to do that, it just seemed a little bit odd. But every time he said something or showed me a way, I found that he was never wrong. He knew some things that I didn't know, but he always supported me. And he always, if I made a mistake, it'd be like it wasn't the end of the world. Sometimes when you make mistakes, you think your parents say, go on about your business, I'm done with you. He never said that to me. And that stuck with me. And that felt like God, right there in my presence. He did say to me one time, you're going to be on the big stage. You're going to be a motivational speaker. And I was like, yeah, you're out of your mind. That's not going to happen. Not me. No way. But here I am today. And so, I had to eat a little bit of crow, and I had to thank him for allowing me to get through that pathway, but seeing me through it as well.
So, what is one childhood memory that still fuels your purpose?
One childhood memory that still fuels my purpose is a family trip that my brother and my mother and I took to California. It disrupted our life, Mr. King, because we lived in Washington our whole life. That's all we knew. When we went to California, we stopped in Richmond to look with our cousin. And, all we wanted to see was the flashing lights of San Francisco, the big buildings. Little did I know that wouldn't transpire immediately. But when we got to Richmond, we got a wake-up call. And that wake-up call was about our culture and who we were as people, as men, and as boys. And I'm thanking God that we got to go through some trying times there. The first day we got there, we were shot at. We saw some gang fights. We had never encountered that in Washington. And so we had to grow up fast. But what I found is that we didn't have to respond the same way they were reacting to their environment. That was just something that's what they knew, but it wasn't who they were. And so our cousins and I, we made a pact that, we wouldn't do that. We would try to be men in the home, provide for our family. So the first summer we were there, we had to go to camp. We had to work hard. And we brought all this food home, and it showed me something that I had never encountered before that we could persevere.
So, how did your upbringing prepare you for the work you do today?
It gave me the concrete foundation to understand that there are steps to progressiveness. One, you got to have a firm foundation, and that's my faith. Second of all, you got to have accountability. Otherwise, you can't accomplish anything. Somebody's got to be held accountable. And thirdly, you got to know that you're going to make an impact, either negative or positive. And you got to make sure that it's positive if you want to create an environment that you can come back to that's endearing. And so those three pillars in my life have meant a lot because they came from the foundation of my family.
Let's transition over to your work as an author. What inspired you to begin writing?
My bout with cancer, the fact that I made it, the fact that my medical team saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. They asked me some questions and they asked me to do something, Charles, that I wasn't willing to do, nor was I gonna do. But after I prayed about it and submitted, I did. They asked me to talk to other patients and to other medical teams. I'm like, you guys must be crazy. You know, some of the information you're giving out is not sincere. It's not in good faith. Why would you want me to talk? It's because I was smiling all the time. And I figured, what was the alternative? I had to be positive all the time. I figured, what was the alternative? And so I said okay after once. I didn't realize the impact that it had on some of the patients, some who are not alive today, but nevertheless, it did have an impact. And that kind of crushed me on the inside because I wanted them to go along with the journey for me, but also showed me what I was capable of doing.
So when you first began to write, did you know what the title of your book was going to be, or how did you derive to the title?
The title came first. That kind of happens with me when I do a speech. It's like I get the title first, and then the speech comes later. And so the title came, I Survived, You Can Too, Bringing Out the Champion Within. I was like, that sounded like a sermon to me. So that's kind of the way it started out for me. I preached it as a sermon. I was like, that's not making sense. And so I started with the back for last chapter, and then I kind of went the opposite way. I started putting pieces together, but I also did some due diligence and found information that was very, very powerful. And a lot of it was about our food source. And, you know, not to belabor the point, but a lot of the reason that people are sick with some of the diseases we have is because of our food source. It's not what it's supposed to be. It's not original. You know, they're putting hormones and other things in it. And so that's why a lot of people are sick. And it's like a vicious circle. You know, we're sick, then hospital makes money, big pharma makes money, and you just keep going around. And it's like, wow, that hurts being in the richest country in the world. It hurts.
So what themes do you find yourself returning to in your work?
Giving back, community, advocacy, on boards again, basically just because sometimes my experience allows me to give information to people in a way that maybe they didn't see it or it wasn't transparent at the time. So I'll give you an example. I ended up on a board, on a transit board in ADA, which is, you know, for disabled people. I really didn't know what I was doing, Charles, but being on the committee opened my eyes, and I saw some things, and I just helped them with some signage. And so I'll just kind of close the story with this. I went to a track site where we were about to have a stop. And I saw 15 different signs from 15 different agencies, all saying different things, going different directions. And I was like, wow, I can see, I can walk, I can touch, I can sense, and I'm confused. So could you imagine with somebody that can't see or hear? And so I said, like, you guys need to all get rid of those signs and maybe just have one, not thinking the committee would listen. And so they all said, okay, we'll put one sign. Well, we saved 2 lives in the first 2 weeks. Because we had some people crossing over the railroad tracks that could not see in directions they were not supposed to be going. I was like, wow, I didn't know that would work. But I just figured outside the box. That's all I was doing.
Was that intentional?
For me, it is. because
Well, I'm talking about all those signs, all them signs. Was that intentional?
well, I'm gonna say it's more political. It's more political. What I found working with government is that they don't communicate with one another when there are different factions for various reasons. Because too many chiefs, not enough Indians is the kind of terminology I would use.
So, how does your writing reflect your personal journey?
Through the obstacles I had to overcome. So in the book, it talks about some of the relationships that I failed at, some of the jobs that I didn't do well or excel at. It was because of my mindset. My mindset was always living in the past. Why did I have to grow poor? Why did I have to grow? That woe is me. And I found out that, what? God had me right where he wanted me. He had me where he needed me. And so I had to say, thank God, and just turn it around and make it positive.
What message do you hope readers carry with them after reading your work?
That it inspires them and gives them hope, and also gives them a reflection that we all are built on something to give back. We're not here for ourselves, we're here for others. Otherwise, why would we have relationships? So, give back. It helps expand who you are. It helps relieve a lot of what's inside, and you find out you become a better person because of it.
So when you when you did write your book and you released it, how was it? How was it when your book first came out, and how is it doing now? And what are some of what's some of the feedback that you're getting back from your audience or from your fans that are reading your work?
I will start by saying this: when you write a book, make sure you read it yourself. I found a lot of misspellings from the publisher, so I had to republish it and do it again. Second of all, I wanted to do a book launch. It never happened because I got sick again. But I found that when I started having speaking engagements, I'd take my books with them and sell out. Every time I just sell out. And so the book hasn't done what I wanted to do, but it has reached the people I wanted it to reach. It's in a segment about spirituality, and sometimes those books don't sell as well as thrillers and novels and other things. But it has done what it's supposed to do. I'm in the second book of writing, and I'm going to go about a little bit different. But I believe that the intent has been met.
How do you balance storytelling with teaching?
To me, storytelling is teaching. I just believe that you have to do it in a way that's relevant, in a way that's passionate, in a way that the audience understands why you're saying what you're saying. For example, when I was talking to people about my illness, there's a lot of people in the room that are already themselves ill. And so I'd ask them how they deal with their day-to-day routine and what I did, how I went through my day. And it helped a lot of people that, I tell them, hey, first thing I do when I get up in the morning is I pray and give thanks to God for another day. Second of all, I think about some positive affirmation to get me through the day, to propel me, to perpetuate me. That's how I keep myself focused on the day's reality. That's not to say negative things aren't going to happen, but are they happening for me or happening to me?
That's $1 million question. What authors have influenced your voice?
Wow. I'm going to say one of them, she passed away not too long ago. I can't even remember her name right now. But she was a poet. She was in a lot of movies. She talked about Harriet Tubman and some other people. Martin Luther King, another person. But one of the people that have inspired me the most is this person that wrote a book about the country that they came from. And her name was Carletta King. She talked about her life in Africa, and I read the book. I can't remember the title of the book right now, so forgive me. But I went to Kenya, and I went to some villages and met this person that wrote this book. And I looked at the circumstances that she had to deal with walking with no shoes, hundreds of miles just to get food, come back to mud floors and house with just, bare minimum, and smiling through it all. I thought, wow, what an inspiration. I got a house with wood floors and I got a toilet with this and that, and I'm complaining. And I got plenty of food and throwing it away. I just learned a good lesson from her. And to this day, I give her thanks because she taught me the biggest lesson, Mr. King, was when we went to dinner. I ordered too much and threw some away, and they cleared the table and left me by myself. I was like, whoa, what happened? What did I do? And they said, we don't throw food away here. And that was the first lesson I learned. The humility is that we take a lot for granted. So I don't take things for granted anymore. They're too precious.
As I think about that, when I hear you say that, there's a lot to be spoken about such a thing, because there's an enormous amount of things here in this country that we all sometimes take for granted, and we don't think about it all the way through, and we don't carry out the purpose in which it's intended. When you think about that and you saw that and experienced that personally, how did that feel to you spiritually and morally when you got back to this country?
When I got back and got off the plane, Charles, the first thing I did was kiss the ground and thank God that I was an American. But I said to myself, I need to get back. So I sent some things over there, which, we won't talk about it, because a lot of them don't have shoes. And to see them walking hundreds of miles with no shoes, I felt guilty because I had like 20 or 30 pairs of shoes. I was like, I don't need that many pairs of shoes. They don't have any. And so I just felt this humiliation and guilt. And I had to get over it because I can't help where I'm born. But I did say that, there were some things I didn't have to have that I thought I needed to have and that I could give to those who didn't have. And it feels good when you do it, because when you see what you have versus what they have, 3 or 4 TVs, they have none, 4 or 5 pairs of shoes, don't need them, 4 or 5 cars, all those things. I started feeling guilty, and I thought, man, I could give one away. And so I went on a spiritual walk to do that. Thank God I was honest with it, and I did what I was supposed to do. I did give a very, very nice car away to a painter who painted my house that needed it for his business. It was hard to do, Charles, but it was necessary. It was necessary.
Yes, sir. I wish that more and more of us could actually do what you did and follow your footsteps, because I call that not just leadership, but that's really helping to build a village, because it was definitely needed. And that's what giving back should be about for all of us.
Yes, it should.
What role does writing play in your healing and reflection?
It allows me to release these endorphins of past hurt, pain, misfortune, obstacles that I went through. When I'm writing, I'm able to get through those moments and not relive them again. And it also, I believe, is helping somebody else walk a path that they need healing as well. So that's why I do it. Not just to help me as a reflection, but to help others.
So how do you approach writing about difficult or personal topics?
Usually I do that through a healing process. This next book I'm writing is about mental health, and having dealt with it myself, and having 2 relatives that have committed suicide. It's a reflection. It takes me back. I sometimes I see their faces and I wonder, why do they end up in that space? I don't totally know, but I do know that I don't want to see anybody else walk that way. And so I want to help them with their mindset. We're all going to go through something. That's part of this sin nature we have. But as I said before, Charles, is it happening for you or happening to you? Your circumstances don't dictate your destiny. You do. How you respond to what you hear, how do you respond to what you see makes a difference. And my mom and my grandmother taught me the responses, to act with kindness, to act with love. And that has helped me through. That doesn't mean that I don't get a little crazy sometimes. I'm human. Sometimes I want to knock folk out, but I know that the end result is they're probably going to want to do the same. So how are we resolving that? We're not. And so I just have to think with kindness. And I believe that love always wins.
What's the most powerful feedback you've received from a reader?
You helped me.
Wow.
When somebody says you helped me, wow, it makes me cry. And so I'm like, wow, that really touched you like that? Yeah. You know, when some people say they heard that, well, you said you believe it. When you believe it, you achieve it. I'm like, yeah, you do. It's mindset thing. You know, what you think about, you bring about. That helped me. Well, I said sometimes it stops you in your tracks when you say it to yourself, because what we think half the time is where we end up. A lot of times people end up, you know, why am I in prison? Your thought process. You know, you thought this, you saw it through, and that's where you ended up. And so think about that in totality, is that if I think positive, the universe is going to respond the same way. It's like the boomerang effect. If I throw it out, it's going to come back to me. And so we just have to really think about the precious moments we have in life and how we're going to respond to things.
Wow. So what future writing projects are you excited about?
This next one that I'm writing on, you know, about mental health, and also this speech that I'm writing that I'm supposed to be speaking overseas at some point. You know, I'll just give you the name of the speech. It's called "Awaken to Arise," but it's about arising and awakening in moments when folk are asleep. Societies have fallen into a still moment of complacency and feel like everything's all right, and all hell's breaking loose all around us. I mean, we got this war, we got people that are hating you because of your religion or your beliefs, people hating you because of your color. This is not a time to get comfortable. When people hate you of your color, you know, one thing my grandmother always taught me, Mr. King, is that at the end of the day, we might have different skin color, but we all bleed red. That's our commonality. So if we all bleed red, we have something in common, and we need to get over ourselves. And so I feel like we're falling asleep, though, you know, because there's so much abundance with the few and lack with so many. We're fighting when we don't really have to. We don't fight for what? If you believe in God, you're going to have provisions for yourself. And there's enough out there to share. We just got to find a way to share it. And you know, what I'm finding is that when you don't share it, somebody's going to come steal it anyway. You might as well just share it. Makes common sense.
Well, here's a comment from Dr. Lorenzo Carswell. He says, "Good evening, gentlemen." Good evening, Dr. Carswell.
Good evening, Dr.
Got to get you back on the show soon.
Good evening, sir.
So let's talk about you know, your work as a motivational speaker, because you mentioned you know, as you was a child, and you said your stepfather told you that you was going to be a speaker, and you said you didn't think that would happen. So as we are here today, can you tell us what was your first experience speaking to an audience?
In college, I took a motivational speaking class, of all things, from a sportscaster that taught at our college, and he was good at what he did. And he had me get up and speak out promptum about Black history, and I faltered. But then I just got it all together, and I started speaking about my mom, and I got this standing ovation. I was like, "What is this going on here?" But that gave me the firm foundation to step out of my comfort zone and speak about things that felt relevant to me, because women weren't accepted at the time. My mom was going through some crisis with mental health, and she went to school with Angela Davis, of all people, and she started to step up her game about things she was saying. We went to the Black Panthers Church in Oakland, and Angela Davis got shot at, and my mom just wasn't having it. And so we started to protest, and that's when I got my first lesson about speaking up and motivational speaking, because I had to say some things about my mom, because people were saying that, you know, she's an all Black crowd, white woman. And like, you know, who she thinks she is? I was like, you know, leave my mom alone. And that's where it started. That's where it started. It's like I was standing up for my family.
So what message do you believe the world needs most right now?
Love. That we have more in common than we don't. And we need to let go of our guard at some time and take on some risks to love people that don't look like us, may not act like us, may not come from the same area, and get to know one another. I found when I got to know, what a Chinese person needs, or what a African American person needs, or a Native American person needs, or a Latino person needs, or somebody from the European country needs. I found out their needs are different than ours, but they're really all the same. It's how we go about getting it. And so to me, if we can find our commonalities, we can get rid of the differences. It's easy to do, but it's also hard because ego gets in the way. And that's our disaster, is our ego.
As you mentioned that and you talk about ego, it kind of reminds me, of a situation when I was, in one of my classes in college. And, there was a few students, that I don't know what you want to call it, because it was like a little ugly thing to me. But, in not wanting to be combative or whatever have you, there were a lot of people that was like turned off about that, because it's like, oh, it's all about me.
Mm-hmm.
When you are doing your speeches, have you ever done a speech, pertaining to people that have that little super ego thing about the entitlement thing? Have you ever done a speech like that?
I did. I did a speech on leadership and leading from the bottom to the top. Woo! I got ripped up by some leaders. They didn't like it. And, who are you to despise? And I said at the end of the day, do those people down there do their job? Are you doing it? No. Then you need to listen. It was humbling, but at the same time, I was ready to fight, because I was one of those people on the bottom. And when I got to the top, I didn't forget. And
Right.
I believe that the problem we have is that a lot of people that are picked for leadership today is based on their algorithm or their pedigree. Charles, that is so wrong. Sometimes they can't.
All levels.
Some people they can't. Sometimes they can't lead people to the bathroom. And I'm thinking, wow, what have you done in the past to prove you're a leader? Sometimes that's all we need. And so I'm not saying that going to school's a bad thing. I'm not saying, coming from an Ivy League background is a bad thing. I'm not saying making a lot of money is a bad thing. But are you listening to your audience? One thing that I learned from a CEO at the bank that I work is that he came and sat with us all a day to find out what it was like to do our job. And he says, I didn't know you guys had to do this. I didn't know how many loans you had to turn down. I didn't know. He changed his whole perspective on the bank, and we made a 180 turnaround in our profit margin just because he spent a day with us. How many leaders spend a day with the people that are down on the line?
Well, see, that's I know that this is another subject, but I just want to say this one last thing and get your opinion.
Okay.
Is that, those particular leaders, they display that same entitlement that I was mentioning and asking you that previous question.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about these schools, like these Ivy League schools and so forth, that actually have that same ego and that same entitlement, because they feel like they are so superior, and America has made them feel that way.
Yeah.
But are those graduate, or are those degrees really worth anything when you can go to a school like Harvard and you're not going to fail?
You're saying something very important, Charles. So I'm going to say this way. I went to school with somebody, and I'll say the name after I get done with the story, who was a famous baseball player. And I had to take his English test for him.
See?
That told me a lot right there. I had to take his English test. So I know that a lot of these people, certain academics, they get passed through because of their name, their family's name, entitlement. And that's why they can't make it, because they're not living on their own accomplishments. And so I'll tell you the person's name, and he's no longer alive, but I cried when I had to take his test because I knew where he was going. His name was Ricky Henderson. This boy was
oh my God.
Possession. And
Yes,
when the teacher told me, I stuck my middle finger. I'm not taking this test. Let him live on his own. He's going to be a baseball player. He don't need to know his name to cash the check. He went back to school. He learned, but I felt bad for him because the reason that he didn't have a lot of money in the beginning is because he didn't know who he was. He knew what he could do, but he didn't know who he was. And people took advantage of it. And that's unfortunate because a lot of our black athletes, they've been taken advantage of because of that. They don't know who they are. And so when you don't look at your own paycheck, you don't know how to count. Come on now. We're not going to do it that way. We're not going to do it that way no more.
Oh, you know what? That's a whole nother show, and we definitely going to have to talk about that because there's so many of them that could be called out. I don't want to do that, but that's a whole nother show because that's all about principle right there.
Yeah.
How do you prepare mentally before stepping on stage?
One of the things I always do, just as a mental checkout for myself, I always go and check out the facility or the venue. I just do. It helps me zone out. I always get places early and I pray. So I'm going to call it meditation. But I take 15 to 20 minutes just to meditate on the effect that I want to have. And then I see myself doing it even before I speak a word. It's like I manifest something before it happens. And so that's kind of how I prepare mentally. Like when I went to Egypt, most of the people there that are listening in the audience, they're speaking Arabic. I'm speaking English, no Arabic at all. I didn't think I'd have any effect. I got a standing ovation. I'm like, wow. Well, it's not necessarily the words I'm saying. It's the way I'm saying them, the way they come out, the passion that comes with it, the way I move around the stage and focus on certain points. They get it. And so to me, you should be focused, laser focused, but you also not take the venue for granted.
We got some comments here from Dr. Carswell, and you're more than welcome to respond to these.
Sure.
The first one here, I'll put it on the screen. He says, great influence by Black women. We have to be aware of gender bias and come together to make things happen. Great story, and he appreciated you sharing. And I'm assuming that this is where you're getting into the part about Ricky Henderson.
Yes. I don't want people to believe that I'm belittling his name because I'm not. He was like a honor badge for me because I got to meet him later on in life. Not that I told him that I helped take this test or anything, but when I saw the growth in him and I saw the family values that he had, it changed my whole perspective because, to be honest with you, I was angry with him. I didn't know why. Maybe because I knew he was going to make it and I didn't think I was. But when I saw his mom and his parents and the family that he had around him in the community, I was proud. I was like, wow, Michael, you need to shut up. You said some very biased things about him in rage that you shouldn't have said because you didn't know where he had come from. No, I didn't. And so one of the things I learned to stop doing was judging people and gossiping about others because sometimes we slander and murder people just with our mouths. And so thank you, Dr. Carswell, because I've learned some good lessons about not making prejudgment about people that I don't know.
And this one, there's another comment here. I put it on the screen. He says he's doing research on a gap in leadership. It comes to emotional intelligence and how to apply it.
You hit the nail on the nail on the head right there. That emotional intelligence, I think, is one of the most lacking things we have in corporate America. They kind of just shoot off at the mouth without thinking things through literally. They don't think emotionally. And a lot of times it's that, as you said, Mr. King, that they feel like they're owed something, that entitlement, because they have this title. And this is what I've told people in organizations where I've been the boss or the CEO is you can fire me at any time I'm not being a leader. Because if I'm not being effective, then I'm not the CEO anyway.
Right.
How many of them are going to come and say that? How many of them really believe that they need to be put on notice when they're out of character? And they won't do it. Most of them won't do it because the shareholders won't allow it. Well, you should, because if I'm a shareholder, I'm going to vote against it. And that's another thing that I would tell people in society to do is get on a board. They're not that hard to get on. I got on boards just because I spoke up, not because I'm smart. That's what I thought. You have to be smart to get on board. No, you don't. You just got to be an advocate. You got to want to stand up and make change. And that's easy to do if you believe in what you're doing.
And this final comment here, is about Ricky Henderson, is, are you serious? Wow, he loved him as an athlete. And, so I just think that, as just mentioned, because Ricky Henderson was a great athlete. I followed his baseball career as well. And, those things that you're mentioning, a lot of that did seep out after he passed.
Yeah.
But, as you're saying, if you didn't know him, you wouldn't understand that. And I think that's the whole point about that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that people recognize the space that I was speaking in, but I have to tell you this story, Mr. King, Mr. Carswell, and others that are on the podcast. I didn't know my grandson's a star baseball player in the Richmond area of California. And guess who showed up at one of his games to give his endorsement? Ricky Henderson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my grandson's grandfather on the other side somehow knew him because of his prominence in the area, and he came to the game and signed something. When I saw the picture, I cried again. I was like, wow, he's really giving back in a big way. Not just because it was my grandson, because of the area. It's not a privileged area to play baseball in. I thought, wow, there you go, Ricky. Thank you. Thank you for who you are. And again, I'm sorry for the things I said in the past, but thank you for being bigger than me.
Wow. What was the moment you realized your voice had an impact?
When I really feel like I've done a couple speeches while in government. When I went to Egypt, and I was the last person to speak in the TEDx International that night. It was late at night, Charles. It was like 10 o'clock. I'm ready to go home. I'm ready to eat. And they called me up. And I'm like, I gotta hit it out the park. And when I got up, I paused for a moment. I was kind of real praying. And the first word out of my mouth was, "You need to hear this." And, people stood up. And when I got done, I saw people clapping and standing up and running towards me. That's when I knew my impact. I was like, wow, they understood what I was saying, and I'm not speaking their language. That's when I knew my impact.
So how did TEDx Cairo change your perspective on global influence?
Culture. I learned, number one, about my own culture, being Black, being African American, about some of our roots. But it's when I got in front of the pyramids, Mr. King, that my whole perspective about life changed. Because I kept looking, I was like, how did they build those? 3,000 years ago, how did they get those right angles? And how? And it's still there today. And I thought to myself, they had to know some stuff we didn't know, but they had to have God with them. And so I vowed to God to that day that I wouldn't look at things the way that I did before with my own eyes. I would look at them spiritually. And that changed my perspective, because when I came home, I had a little bit more respect for the things that I had, my home, my relatives, my family, everything just changed. I thought, wow, I've been taking a lot for granted. And there's some people over there, they ain't got nothing. And so that really changed my perspective. And I'm so thankful for my coach to allow me to come over there, say what I had to say, and for the experience I had with the people around there.
I want to do a little emphasis on that, because you said something that and even when we talked, is that when you mention culture and you think about that, and this is being mild, I just think that when you have something like that, and we know from how many centuries ago that was, that not only was that an innate knowledge, those were original creations that couldn't be stolen like other things, or duplicated. Let me put it that way. Couldn't be duplicated like other things. But in the process of not being able to duplicate that, and still studying it today and can never get those figures correct. It signifies to me that I just think that the technical age was before our knowing, but these people already had this knowledge and was doing it already. And so I think they did something that's actually a standing of time, but you know, the historical context will never put it in that way of giving these people credit for being the originals of what they built.
You're so right, Mr. King. But they don't have any other way to put it. It's still there. They can't deny it. They have to acknowledge it. You know, I'll tell you this: that if people, I would say go if you can go. But when you look at the Sphinx, they tried to blow it up. That's why one of the eyes is gone. Didn't work. Still there.
Right.
I won't say what countries have tried to steal some of the artifacts, but you can read about that in the news. They had to bring it back because they don't understand it. So that tells you that God inspired them to do something that just can't be done. You know, people have tried to climb the pyramids. They stole some of the copper that was on top, but they never stay for long. They always come back, oh, you know, how'd they get it up there? Well, you know, science, math. They had technology that stood the test of time. So this technology, like you said, it's been around forever. And to me, you know, we work in time, but God doesn't. God doesn't work in time. And so, you know, enough said about that. He gonna do things the way he want, and we have to receive them.
Well, we know who the mathematicians were.
There you go. It was black people. It was black people.
Here's another comment here. Right, sir. Use our voice. Our ancestors suffered for our rights. Great talk, Mr. Wilkins.
Yeah, let's never forget. Thank you for that comment. Let's never forget the people that set the precedents. You know, that suffered for what we take as just common today. The Martin Luther Kings. You know, those people that put their life on the line. You know, yeah. I think about Jesse Jackson, who just passed recently, and Andrew Young, and some of these other people, Angela Davis, and some of those folk. They way ahead of their time, And the fact that we just take it as common that we can go and vote, they're trying to take that away right now. Exactly. And so don't take it as, you know, a grain of salt. Be humble. Go vote. That was one of the first things that I learned in high school, Mr. King, was to go exercise my right to vote. And I've been doing it ever since, and I'm not going to stop. And, you know, who I vote for is my business. But and so I tell people, don't take that for granted, because it's something you need to do. And then if you don't vote, don't complain about the outcome.
Well, you have to remember, we were taught civics. They took that away.
Yeah. This is true.
What's the most memorable audience reaction you've ever received?
A standing ovation, but also I had somebody come up and, you know, standing ovation is something that a lot of motivational speakers seek. And so when you get one, you kind of know if you're going to get it or not. But when somebody comes up and says, I'd like you to speak it blankety blank, hey, that hits home. That's the whole reason that you go. And so when I left Paris this past March, and I got home, and you know, I got these calls from these people. I'd like you to come speak at this. And I'm like, really? You know, about what? Whatever you want. I trust you. I was like, wow, okay. What I'm doing is hitting home. It's hitting people's hearts, their souls, and their minds, and it's impactful. Not that makes me better than anybody. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm living my creed.
How do you tailor your message to different communities?
I have to study the subject first. So I don't want to go and speak into somebody's community and not really understand what that community may be going through or what that genre may be going through. Example, I had to speak to a senior community, which I never considered myself to be a senior, although I am. And I did. It was space I just didn't want to operate in. I did it in 2024. There was a lot of seniors there. And I just thought, you might be old, but you're still young. Because if you're still living, you still have something to do. And so go do it. That's kind of what my speech was about. But I was very emphatic about it. I got in kind of in their face about getting complacent, because a lot of retired people, we just want to sit at home, drink our tea and coffee, and go on through our day until we get robbed, until expenses go up, until we can't afford our own medical care or our prescriptions. Well, that's kind of what I talked about. You want to change, you better go say something. You better go get in your senator or your congressman's ear. But you also should be passionate about your community. If I see somebody that's struggling, I try to help them, because that could be me.
Yeah, exactly. What topics are closest to your heart when speaking?
Spirituality, forgiving, faith, inspiration, and most of all, advocacy. Those advocacy is the biggest one for me, because some people don't have a voice. There's no way for them to communicate the thing they want to say, and so we have to be their voice. And so I've chosen to be that voice within reason. I'm not the only one, but I'm going to study the subject as well. I'm going to make sure that I'm sharp on what I'm talking about, and that whatever I'm going to say is going to pierce somebody's heart, that they respond in a like-kind way.
What do you want people to feel after hearing you speak?
Inspired, hopeful, feeling like they can make a difference, that they can go home and make change just like I did. We can all do it. As I said before, we're all here for a purpose, and we have to find what our purpose is. Some people want to sit on the bench and just watch the game be played until they have to play the game. Well, let's stop playing the game and get in the game.
So how do you stay inspired as a speaker? Because I know that's got to be a lot.
By listening to other speakers, my pastor, being around influential people in my community. I go to a lot of different events, and I'm a sponge. So listening to them inspires me. That's how I got. The first person that ever inspired me to want to speak was Martin Luther King, when he gave his I Dream a speech. I started regurgitating it myself, and I got up and started preaching it. And I thought, wow, I want to do that. But I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it back then for fame. Now I want to do it for impact. Totally different.
So let's transition down to your work as a pastor and faith leader, because you mentioned so much about your spirituality and what it means to you. Can you tell us what led you to become an ordained pastor?
That was a battle with God. I ended up in a church where my family was oriented with, my dad's side of the family, just attending. And one day they asked me to talk about a subject for Martin Luther King's birthday. I'm like, okay, I can do this. I've done that before. And so I got up and gave a speech, Wake Up America, We're Not Free Yet. And overwhelming response. Number one, because of the subject matter, and they said, where'd you get that from? I said, well, I spoke about it several years ago. It's just been something in my head. You're a good speaker. You're meant to be a pastor. I'm like, no, I ain't. I just want to get up and speak today. But I went home guilt-ridden, because I was like, people don't just say that to be saying it. And 3 people said it to me, which is divine. And so I was like, God, what do you really want from me? Be careful what you ask God for, because he sat me down and told me about myself. And that's when I just gave in and said, okay, put me in training. Next thing I know, I was in charge of Sunday school, superintendent, in charge of this, in charge of that, finances. And it just became natural for me. So when I got up to speak, it was just something natural, but I also wanted to share the stage with others, especially women, because I felt like some of them had passion that was being bottled up. And so that's kind of how I got started.
So how does ministry influence your leadership style?
Mostly with integrity and trust, because to me, if you're going to be a pastor or you're going to be a person of faith, you got to have some integrity and some trust. So I try to be a man of my bond. If I say I'm going to do something, do it, because you lose a lot of people right there. You say, hey, I'll be at church at 9 o'clock and then they're 10:15. You ain't no pastor to them. And so be the Jesus they want to see, because we have to be a reflection of him. And so I try to set myself in a foundation of humility, first of all. I'm a man first. I'm a pastor second. And I may make some mistakes, but don't take it personal and hold me accountable. But I always want to be transparent about what I'm trying to do. So if I say I'm going to do something, do it. I think one of the things I'm finding is a perspective that people are bent on in church now is accountability with money. That's one thing. When I started church, everybody knew where every penny was going. They knew how much we had every month or every quarter, and that I wasn't taking it. And when it was being spent, a lot of times it was being spent on the community or, the congregants there within. But, when they find that, you done bought a gold Cadillac and people are still hungry, they're going to be upset.
So how do you take your messages, as a pastor? How do you take those into the community and speak and engage with the community?
Usually my message is about something that, we're going through now, but has relevance in the Bible in the past. And so I'll just give you a particular scripture that is a favorite of mine. It's a book of Luke, the 15th chapter, verses 11 through 32, which is about the prodigal son. I feel like a lot of us men are prodigal sons. We go out in life and live a riotous living, spend all our money, lose everything, and then we're in want. And we want to come back home, but we're too ashamed to come back home. We're carrying our tail behind us, and we don't want to admit that we've made some mistakes. And the father's just waiting with his arms open, like, come back home. And so I had to go through that. I had to come back home one time, and after I'd done some things wrong. And I remember my mom saying, whatever made you think that the door wasn't going to be open? And when she said that, I was like, because of what you said when I left. But, sometimes they say things they don't really mean. And so I feel like a lot of us, we just don't know how to admit that we've made a mistake and come back home. And it's easy to do as long as you just say, hey, I'm human. Life is life. Just, don't try to repeat the mistake. Learn from it. Build on it.
Well, you know how them egos are now.
Some of them are bulletproof, Mr. King. Some of them are bulletproof. You can't get through some of these hard heads. But let me tell you somebody, God can. When he gets you down in that gutter and you ain't got nothing else but some sloppy, you'll wake up. You'll wake up. You'll be like, I'm in a pigsty and I'm in the feces and I ain't got, that's where I'm at. I want to go home now. You'd be like, come on, but you got to change your perspective in the way you're going to respond to things and listen. And, I think for me, I'm going to speak for me, not all men, but some of us have a problem with listening because of the way culture cultivates us, man. We're meant to be strong physically, but emotionally we're shut down.
Yes.
Open up. That's where you can grow. When you open your emotions, you can grow physically. And so to me, we have to be more responsive to our emotions and our feelings. Not that they matter very much, but we have them.
So what role does compassion play in your work?
It's the most important thing. It's critical. If you don't have any passion, how can you be empathy? How can you have any empathy if you don't care about what you're saying or you're doing and how you touch people? So to me, it's critical. That's got to be the foundation of all of it.
So how do you balance spiritual leadership with professional leadership?
It's got to be the pinnacle of my professionalship. I can't go into my professional life without my spirituality because I'll lose my way. So I'll give you an example. When I first got promoted as a leader in the government, I wanted to stick up my spear and cut some heads off and walk forward and tell everybody who I was. And I found that just wasn't going to be effective. And so what I did instead was showed how much I cared about the staff, and they responded in like. I had to learn, some of their jobs, but I found, I'd ask people like, what's important to you? And they tell me, I write that down. So I created this luncheon one time for all my staff who happen to all be women, where I honored each of them. They didn't even know what I was honoring them for, for crushing this statistic or crushing that statistic. And the next week, they did even better. And they asked, well, why'd you do that? Because I need you. That's what I said. I need you. What do you mean you need me? I can't do this job without you. I'll fail. I'm nothing without you. And so when you surround yourself with people that know they're cared about, they usually respond in kind.
So tell us, what's the most powerful testimony you've witnessed?
The most powerful testimony I've witnessed. Sorry if I get emotional, but I had a cousin whose child was, I'm going to say, basically murdered in childcare. The childcare provider hit the child on the head at 4 or 5 months, caused a bruise on the brain and so on and so forth. The child lived a couple of months on, attachments and all that. And we had to take the child off all those attachments because the child wasn't really alive. And they laid the child in our arms. And it was not easy to go through with my cousin, but he had other children. And so when somebody stood up and said, what about your other children? That changed his life. That doesn't, he still had to go through his grief moment, but it made him become a better father to the children that still lived. They're like, you still got 4 other children that you need to be a father to. Don't shut down now. Don't shut down because he's not breathing anymore. Although we know he's gone, we're sorry. It hurts, but you got to live for these other 4 children. And I saw him change in a way that I never saw him change. And he inspired me to become a better father.
Situations like that, especially some unfortunates that happens in some of these daycares with toddlers and babies. I guess it is unfortunate, but did they ever, as far as like for you and your family, did you guys want to make sure that these that they got qualified people to do this? Because there was spurts where that was happening a whole lot.
Well, what's ironic, Mr. King, was I was overseeing childcare policy in the region where that happened, so I took it personal. But she was a personal childcare provider, not licensed, unlicensed, which was problematic in itself. She was going through the process, and my cousin left the child there out of desperation, even though he was told not to. He kind of did it out of desperation. So without blaming him for all that, we just walked through it. I said, you got to do your due diligence, even on family. You got to do background checks, but then you also got to make sure it feels good in the heart. Because like you said, that just because they're licensed doesn't make it all right. It happens there too. But
right.
We learned a good lesson. We did change some policies on the way we did child care licensing. So back then we were doing background checks on everybody annually. I got it changed to quarterly. So we started doing it because, if you commit a crime and you wait till the next annual, they might have committed 4 or 5 crimes by then. So we got it changed to every quarter. That costs a lot more money, but because of that death, they allowed it.
So how do you help people navigate seasons of struggle?
By being transparent about my own struggles. It's the only way I can help them. That I'd be lying and say if I didn't have my own struggles that we all don't have struggles. So I just try to be honest about my own struggles and, deal with it with humility and transparency. I told somebody about, having too many babies mamas and that I wasn't proud about that I, was getting slammed for child support, and I learned a good lesson that was my circumstance. Not to blame anybody. I'm not going to say that, they took it on a black man. I made those choices, but I paid every penny. And so I told people from now on that I don't just think with, the orifices of my body, I think spiritually. Because I think sometimes, you see a 32, 24, 36 Coke bottle body, you'd be like, whoa, no, I ain't thinking that way. Because I don't know, I got to open up the page and read the book. And sometimes when you read the book, you're like, man, I wish I hadn't even read that book. And so Michael thinks a little bit different.
I'm sorry. That was funny, but that's good right there. I like it.
truth.
What does faith mean to you in times of uncertainty?
It's how I make my decisions in uncertainty. I'd say that we're going through that right now in the world with this war and uncertainty and lack of food source and natural resources. And if I don't fall on my background of faith, I'll give up, because I'll just go to the natural thing, the human thing, and what I see, and not what I know or what I feel or what I sense. The Bible says in Hebrews 11:1 that now faith is the substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not yet seen. I don't need to see it. I trust God, and I know that He will provide and He will prevail, and that's what gets me through the day.
How do you integrate faith into your everyday decision making?
Carefully. I put my faith as like the all-encompassing circle around all my decisions. Not that I won't make a decision sometimes without thinking through it spiritually, but at the end of the day, that's what answers it. Example, before I leave the house for the day, I always kind of ask God, which way do you want me to go? Because sometimes I want to go my own way. I want to take the scenic route. But He always kind of leads me through a certain path, and that path always gives me an answer because of what I see along the path. Somebody hungry, somebody in need, somebody reaching out for help. And I'm thinking, wow, I got more than I should have. And it leads me into the response of giving back.
What is your prayer for the communities you serve?
To find compassion through Christ Jesus. When you think about what Christ went through here as a human on earth, I don't think any of us can endure it. Yet He did for us sinners. And to see what He gave compared to what we take, there's just no comparison. He gave much more than we could ever give. And so that always leads me and propels me forward. That's why I want to give back, because I know that if it wasn't for Christ, I'd be in some prison somewhere locked up forever just because of my mindset. I was locked up in my mind, and I had to release myself. I had to release myself from all the past hurt, all the past burdens, all the past pain, and things that I thought I should have accomplished in this competition that we're in with other men. I'm not in competition with anybody but myself. And that's the way I look at life.
You couldn't have said that no better. I wish that most of us could think that way, because I think for some strange reason, again, go back to that crazy ego and that thinking about me. I think it's when you were talking about timing, this is the wrong time for that. So I hope that can change.
Yeah, I agree. I hope that it does.
What legacy do you hope your ministry leaves behind?
I hope that my legacy leaves behind open doors for others that were closed, that may now be open because of things I said, places I served, that they don't have to go through the hoops that I necessarily had to go through or my foreparents had to go through, and that it inspires them to open other doors that are not open now. In industries that I'm a musician as well, have family that are musicians, and entertainment is hard to get through. I've given up on it several times. I played locally, played in the church. And the reason I've given up on it is because, sometimes I thought I didn't have the sauce to make it. But that's not true. Sometimes it's just the family you come from or the person that's promoting you. But I'm promoting me and God's promoting me, and that's all that matters. And so I hope that people believe enough in themselves that they know if they believe it, they can achieve it. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. It doesn't matter what circumstances you come from, background you come from. If you believe it, you certainly going to achieve it.
So in closing, can you tell us, do you have any words of wisdom and encouragement for our audience? Can you tell them how to connect with you via social media, your
Sure,
website, any of your
sure,
services, things of that nature that they can get?
sure. If you would like to reach me, you can reach me through deutschconsulting@yahoo.com, which is my email. Um, my social media on IG is Positive Is Me 4600. You can look me up through Google through deutschconsulting@yahoo.com as well. Or you can even reach me by telephone number. I want to give out my telephone number. I'm not going to answer everybody that call, but I'll give my telephone number to people that are serious about what they're trying to do, and that's 253-651-6606. If you really are trying to reach your destiny and I can help you, I will, and you probably can help me as well. That's kind of where I will leave it.
Alrighty. Before I do my closing, I want you to know that I'm going to close with a monologue. But I like to say some things to the audience. Do you have a few minutes after the closing of the show that I can chat with you for a few minutes?
Absolutely.
Alrighty, thanks. So for those of you that are watching on all of our streaming channels, including our YouTube channels, if you have not yet subscribed to any of the channels, I ask if you would please support us by subscribing to the channels, enabling all notifications where every time we do a show, I do a post, or there's anything in there that's working with the community, you guys can be a part of it, and I would definitely appreciate that. So in closing, I want to say, Michael, your journey reminds us that leadership is not a title, it's a lifestyle. It's the courage to stand in the gap, the discipline to build systems that serve people, and the humility to acknowledge the shoulders you stand on. Your mother and great grandmothers poured into you a strength that now pours into communities, organizations, and individuals across this nation. Your story is a blueprint for purpose. Your voice is a catalyst for change. Your work is a testament to what happens when calling meets commitment. Thank you for sharing your heart, your wisdom, and your legacy. And with us tonight on America in Black and White, I want to say thank you. I want to thank everyone for listening. And I'll tell you, please come back and watch us again tomorrow night as we have another great show for you. You all have a great evening again. Thank you and good night.
Good night.